Very special good evening, good afternoon to all of you who have joined today's session with our international guest speaker, Honorable Dr. Barry Rathner, sir. Today he will talk about the Swadhyaya, the fifth step of fivefold path of Vedas, a 24-hour non-stop practice. And he is a Homa psychotherapist, spiritual counselor, scientist at Eco Village, Brzegu, Aranya, Poland. So, without taking too much time, I would like to invite our honorable guest speaker and audience who are watching us live on YouTube can ask your queries through comment, and after the session, I would try to take answers from our guests to their queries. So, thank you so much, sir, again for providing your valuable time and such a wonderful and nice topic, Swadhyay. So, without any interruption, I would like to invite you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Samyak. I'm audible, yes?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, so uh, it's nice to see some of you again. That is a proverbial seeing. Uh, one of these days, perhaps I can return to India, where I lived for many years and studied, or you can come to Europe, Poland, and I can see you in person. So the topic is Swadhyaya, and some of you may be knowing that Swa means self in Sanskrit, and Yaya means study of. So self-study, studying ourselves. And this is a good subject because, number one, the thing that we all have with us all the time is ourselves. Waking, sleeping, whatever, I'm with myself and you are with yourself. And the good thing about self-study is it's been said that the only way out is in. The only way out of our misery, the only way out of our ignorance is to go within ourselves, because within ourselves are all the answers. And with a little bit of practice, we can all experience this firsthand. Now, the first question, if some of you may not be knowing what the fivefold path is, it consists of 5 simple disciplines, the first of which is yajna, that is purification through fire. The second is dana, which means sharing our material assets in a humble manner. The third step is tapa, self-discipline. The fourth step is karma, living our lives according to law of karma. And number 5, our topic for today is swadhyaya, self-study, which in a nutshell is an attempt to answer the question, who am I? Who am I really? I'm not my profession. I'm not where I live. I'm not what I've done. I am something else. And studying that is swadhyaya. And the reason that the title talks about swadhyaya being a non-stop job is because it is a non-stop job. Because every moment we're either thinking something or feeling something or willing something, which are the three functions of our minds. And we cannot escape our minds. We can try, perhaps through meditation, which we'll talk about later, but basically the mind is what we want to control. We have a mind training program, which I'll talk about. And the goal there is to control our minds so that our minds do not control us. The first of the fivefold path steps is yajna. And even though we're talking primarily about number 5, SWADHYAYA, I must mention yajna because yajna is the door. It's either the door or the door opener, depending on how you want to look at it. Yajna opens the door to self-knowledge, to service, to happiness. And then it might be said that the other 4 steps help us enter the space into which the door opens. So, as important and valuable as yajna is, that's not the end of the story. The primary yajna, some of you know if you've heard me speak before, is Agnihotra, done at the exact moment of sunrise and sunset, ideally every day. And even though this word in India and some other countries may refer to other processes and rituals, the one that we are involved in and that we know about and have studied rigorously for over 40 years is the Agnihotra at sunrise and sunset, the exact second, actually. The fire consists of only dried cow dung and cow's ghee. And there are 2 ahutis, 2 offerings after the word swaha, consisting of some raw rice, akshata, unbroken, ideally organic, and ideally unpolished. So brown, red, black rice is preferable to white rice. Those who are new may want to make note of this website, and that I'll give you 2 websites. I'm in Poland. The website for the eco village at which I live is agnihotra.pl. P like Pune, L like love. Agnihotra.pl. And another website that will tell in more detail than we have time to discuss is homatherapy.org. Homa is another word for fire in Sanskrit besides the word yajna. Now, with this SWADHYAYA, self-study, we're kind of losing the battle that we are involved in at the moment. Meaning, there's only so much that can be conveyed through the spoken language or the written language, because that which is within ourselves is basically defies description in any language. There are references in Vedas, of course, to what we're talking about in Sanskrit language, but it's basically something that one needs to experience, not only to believe, but to know what we're talking about. So that's why I encourage people to do a 2-week experiment with Agnihotra. Get a copper pyramid, a kunda. Get the proper one, not one with handles, as is sold in India through some sources. Homatherapy.org will have photos of the correct products. And then dried cow dung is easy to get, especially in India. And pure cow's ghee is easy to get as long as you trust your source. In the old days, when cow's ghee was more expensive than buffalo milk ghee, they would substitute sometimes, they would cheat and put buffalo milk in with the cow's milk. So best to avoid that, best that it's organic. It's nice if it's from a Desai cow, but it need not be. Any progeny of a cow provides dung that is acceptable for Agnihotra. So, Swadhyaya. When we've already spoken about why this is a full-time job, and let's start with attitude. My son, when I was having some problems with depression, when was this? This was like 1997, sent me a quotation that said something like, what happens to us in life is 5% of the game. The other 95% is attitude, is how we react to that 5%. If that sounds depressing, it shouldn't, because I can't control necessarily what happens to me, the 5%, but I can potentially control the 95%, my attitude towards what I have experienced, what I have seen. Here's a rather dramatic example. I know someone who had some serious health problems a couple of years ago, and the result was one of his eyes stopped functioning. He couldn't see from one of his eyes. That's what happened to him. His attitude, however, was such that we can all learn a lot, because he basically had the attitude that, well, I still have one good eye. And this is not the way many of us would react. We might curse our fate, our circumstances, and ask God why he has made me lose one eye. This person did not do that. He went right on. His faith was not diluted, and it was quite marvelous. So there's a dramatic example. The way it's said often in society is, do you consider your glass half full or half empty? And in a nutshell, that's what we're talking about here at the moment. Can I be satisfied? Can I be happy with what I have? And going within gives us insight into, among other things, that what I have doesn't matter all that much materially. Many people think it does. When I lived in India in the early 80s, many people there, knowing that I'm from the United States, would want to talk about and hope that they could be as materially prosperous as Americans were, more so than Indians, at least percentage-wise. Well, many people tried to become rich, tried to get this, tried to get that, and they found that it didn't make them any happier. So there must be another road towards happiness. Many people think a key is service, and that doing service can also help us with our swadhyaya. There's a wonderful equation that I was taught. Service divided by ego equals devotion. Service divided by ego equals devotion. So those of you who have some mathematics skills know, okay, let's say I do 100 units of service. If my ego, on whatever scale you want to measure it, is 2, then 100 divided by 2 is 50, and that would be the extent of my devotion. If I even did twice the amount of service, let's say 200 units, and my ego went up to, let's say, 10 units, then 100 divided by 10 would be 10. So even though I have 100 units of service, my devotion quotient would just be 10 because my ego had increased. So this is where we look at a very important goal as being service without ego, or certainly with less ego. This is very similar, by the way, to step 2, dana, which is sharing of our material assets. And ideally, it should be done anonymously, but certainly not with blowing your own horn. You know, someone gives and actually not dana, because that's, in a sense, trying to take credit for the donation. So the same thing with service. If we do service without ego or with less ego, then we are doing it as an instrument of the divine, potentially. I'm going to talk a little bit at some point about grace. And let's see, there was a quotation that I wanted to see. Yeah. What is destiny? What is free will? Destiny is a check drawn on the bank of accumulated karma. And by exerting free will, you can override the pangs of destiny. Now, the country in which I've lived for the last 12 years, that is Poland, has very strong influence from the Catholic Church. And in Catholicism, they have confession, where you go to the priest and you confess your sins, and then he or she, probably he, can, in a sense, forgive those sins, and you can start fresh. Well, this part of the quotation, by exerting free will, you can override the pangs of destiny, that reminded me of confession. So, let's say I enter this life with some bad karma from a previous life. Or if you're not believing in reincarnation, let's say that the first 25 years of this life, I engaged in activities that I would not be proud of. Let's say I was a bank robber, or a smuggler, or a drug user. Do I have a chance to overcome those pangs of destiny? Well, the answer is yes, by exerting free will. So this is in part SWADHYAYA. we've mentioned the word happiness a couple of times when we're talking. And in this age of internet everywhere, many people could be excused for attaching happiness to material objects. Or, for example, for those of us who are interested in drugs and alcohol, or were, I'll tell you a little quick story. In, I guess, around the year 1995, I was living in Southern California, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And one night, while under the influence of marijuana, I was looking out at the ocean from my balcony, and it occurred to me that I was quite happy. And that furthermore, this substance, marijuana, which was not legal in those days, like it is now in many places, I thought that this substance was the key to being happy all the time. If I was doing something boring, I could smoke marijuana and be happy. If I was at work and would have preferred not to be at work, if I was high, I would be happy or happier. Well, I had learned 20 years before that I was addicted to marijuana, so I didn't use it for most of those 20 years. But then I started up again and was thrown back into the state of ignorance that I had been into in the 70s. So I got out of that. Agnihotra certainly helped. And I studied the mind training program that I've spoken about in previous talks. And I tried to engage in meditation. I learned that meditation is not something that you just sit down and do. It's a 3-step process. First step is concentration, concentrating on a holy person, concentrating on a mantra, for example. And that if that's done successfully, one goes into a state which we call contemplation. And the next step is meditation. So if your spouse asks you, what are you doing? And you say, I am meditating, you probably aren't. You could probably say, I'm trying to meditate. But if you were in the state of meditation, I don't think you could answer that question at that moment. So there. I want to talk a little bit about depression and then a little bit about grace. Depression is something that has troubled me 3 or 4 times during my life, usually brought on by some dramatic or semi-dramatic event, like a divorce, like the death of someone close to me and such. And when I spoke to a therapist about this, which is not unusual since I'm a therapist myself, he told me that depression is, in his opinion, a sign from the person to the person that something needs to be changed in his or her life. Something needs to be added or something needs to be subtracted. So, since many of the symptoms of depression include not being interested in things you were interested before, not deriving pleasure from things you derived pleasure from before, so you're like an empty vessel. And it's that empty vessel that then we try to fill with activities that we had not been engaged in so much, or by eliminating certain actions, say drug use, for example, then we experience what is called addition by subtraction. By subtracting this or that action, I become better. I have added something to my well-being. That's enough about depression, because it's kind of depressing to talk about it. Not really, but it sounds good. I wanted to talk a little bit what is to some of us the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room, which means something important that we haven't spoken about, is COVID-19. Because COVID-19, with its lockdowns, with its barriers to normal social life, has the potential to have taught us some important lessons. And since this has been going on for more than a year and a half, many of us may have learned those lessons already. But the figures of mental health disturbances worldwide are so high and have increased so much that we might assume that many of us have not learned those lessons yet. The first lesson, one might say, is that there are many things over which we have no control. Okay? In the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and other 12-step programs, they have this serenity prayer, which says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, if you're locked down, you really can't change that. You can change other aspects of it by having different attitudes towards it. So that's one lesson. And many other people have questioned what their purpose in life is by conditions brought on by COVID-19. A basic question of SWADHYAYA is not only who am I, but why am I here? Why am I in this body, on this planet, at this time, in this country, etc.? Now, there's a Sanskrit word that describes why I'm here. It is vikarma, V-I-K-A-R-M-A. Vikarma is the specific allotted task that you have in this lifetime, that I have in this lifetime, that the person you're married to has in this lifetime, the person you gave birth to has in this lifetime. A specific allotted task. And discovering that is a primary facet of SWADHYAYA. Taking actions to fulfill your vikarma then may cross over into other categories, like karma, the fourth step of the fivefold path, or like tapa, if you determine that in order to fulfill your vikarma, you need to be more disciplined, so that you have, let's say, more time for service, which is not taken up by Netflix or HBO, then one might want to apply self-discipline to those actions. Not that there's anything wrong with Netflix or HBO, but moderation is a key. And it has been said by my teacher, Vasant Paranjape, and it's also been said by a woman, Carolyn Mace, which is spelled M-Y-S-S, who's both of whom say all human beings are addicts. All human beings are addicts. So if you think the 12-step program is not for you, well, it may not be for you, but there may be elements of it that may help you, because if you're human, you're an addict. There's another interesting thing that Carolyn Mace says, that all human beings have an archetype of self-sabotage. Self-sabotage. What does this mean? It means there are times when we do not do things that are in our own welfare, and that we, in fact, consciously or subconsciously do things that sabotage, that get in the way of our happiness, get in the way of our service. What's an example? There's one thing that some of my clients tell me about, and that I've experienced myself, that I may be so happy about, I don't know, a talk that I've given, a class that I've taught, or something successful. And then what do? You know, in society in general, people quote unquote celebrate. They celebrate. So if the way you've chosen to celebrate is by getting drunk, let's say, not only will you not be so happy the following morning, but you will have, in a sense, sabotaged yourself, because instead of drawing on the strength from the good actions you had engaged in, you have, kind of taken a step backwards. And that's a tendency of ours, but it can be overcome. The first step might be to realize it. Why am I here? Some people are very unhappy with lockdowns because they can't travel here or there, safely at least. And that bothers them a lot. Why? Because one of the things they enjoyed in life was to travel to this country and travel to that country and eat this food in that country and another food in another country. And that becomes, if not an addiction, it becomes a desire turning into a propensity. And you might think of that as a 3-step process. I have a desire. I think about it a lot. I write about it a lot. I dream about it a lot. It becomes a propensity, which is like a stronger desire. And if I don't do anything to moderate it, to balance it, then it can become an addiction. So, some people might not want to engage in at all. If one is truly an alcoholic, he or she, according to the 12-step program, should not drink at all. Not a glass of wine with dinner, not one shot of bourbon, but not drink at all. Why? Because they're addicted to alcohol. Or you can say they have an allergy to alcohol. I told you some of the experience I had with marijuana. Consider myself to have been addicted to marijuana. So, for the last 23 years and 3 months, I have not used any substance that affects my mind. That means, in a way, doesn't alter my consciousness. No liquor, no marijuana, no this, no that. Some of you might be knowing this, I guess you can call it a school of philosophy, which is called Epicureanism. And the Epicureans had a kind of mantra that went like this: eat, drink, and be merry. These were their goals. Eat, drink, and be merry. Some people who don't finish that quotation should note that the finish of it is, for tomorrow we die. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Well, if in fact you were going to die tomorrow, then you may have less to lose by eating, drinking, and being merry. But just like the guy we were talking about a few moments ago, who celebrated by getting drunk and woke up with a hangover, he may have wished he had died the next morning. But if he didn't, he may have doubts about the wisdom of that behavior. In the past 18 months, perhaps more people have died on this planet than have died ever in history. And we who are still living and breathing might consider our choices to include: what life lessons may I learn from the suffering of others? And must I experience pain and suffering to teach me some important lessons? Those lessons might include caring for others, being humble, and looking for ways to do service. Waking up each morning saying or thinking or feeling, how can I help? How can I serve? Rather than waking up and thinking about my lower back pain. Sometimes it takes a lot of experience, a lot of older age, to realize that the rewards of our life are such that we would like to live our life in a way that will make those rewards happen. So, if we think of our rewards as something like peace, purpose, that serenity prayer talked about serenity. Serenity is, basically a synonym for peace. So the problem is, those are just words. And a lot of what we're talking about, we said in the beginning, cannot be put into words. So that's a problem. Well, that's where one word comes in that can help us. That word is faith. F like Frank, A-I-T-H. And my favorite quotation dealing with faith comes from St. Augustine, who said, faith is to believe in what we do not see. And the reward is to see what we believe. Faith is to believe in what we do not see, and the reward is to see what we believe. So if I have faith that a certain peace, a certain serenity, a certain being happy in the here and now can be something that I can engage in more and more in my life, then even if it hasn't happened in the first year, the first 5 years, the first 10 years of my efforts, I still have the faith that it will occur, and I will not cease my efforts. I always liked the story of the guru who told the disciple, the guru lived on the top of a mountain. He said, gave him a list of tapas, a list of disciplines to do for 12 years. And then he said, okay, come back after 12 years and we'll talk. So the disciple did all these actions for 12 years, then with great effort climbed back up the mountain to see the guru. And the guru said 2 words, 12 more, 12 more years. So, time is an interesting thing we can talk about sometimes. Through experience, and this is why we suggest, I think I said earlier, suggested a 2-week experience with Agnihotra. Why? Then you can believe what you experienced, not what I tell you, not what the website say, not what Vedas says, your experience. Because frankly, you can't put into words, and I know hundreds, perhaps thousands of people who've done twice daily Agnihotra for a long time. You really can't put into words what you experience. So, if you're interested, do that little experiment. If we don't take actions to improve our lives, then we become kind of like that hamster, that little animal that goes round and around on the hamster wheel and ends up pretty much in the same place. This is what definitely happens in the world of addictions. And if you think that the hamster is just exercising, think again. And this is part of self-study, SWADHYAYA. I'm getting close to opening up the door to questions or comments from listeners. And let's just see what else I might want to talk about before I do that. I don't think I finished my story about smoking weed on the balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean. I thought that marijuana was the key to my being happy all the time. And it was for a month or two, maybe 6 months. And then a line was crossed and it led to a very deep and very serious depression. So I don't want to do that again. Perhaps the next time we meet, we can talk more about the mind training program. Let's just end with a paragraph from a brilliant book by Vasant Paranjape, my teacher. He wrote, "The experience that the light shines within you may come quite suddenly and may even surprise you when you're not expecting it. You find the treasure right within you. You find that the mind is under your control and the whole being is quieted. You feel a great merciful power has its spell on you. You feel you are that power. To know this is SWADHYAYA." So that's why I began by saying the only way out is in. The only way out of our misery, out of our disturbances, is to go inside. Concentrate, contemplate, meditate. All of these things we've talked about, in my experience, can be made more easily accomplished by doing Agnihotra. And it doesn't take a long time. Those 2 weeks will show you something, And after more than 40 years of doing Agnihotra every sunrise and sunset, uh, each one does not lose its significance, its excitement. It does not lose my experiencing tangible, palpable results. But don't believe me, try it yourself. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a wonderful session and having so much good things with beautiful examples. So now we would like to move our question on round, and in this question answers round, we have a professor from India. He wants to ask some queries. I would like to put him on the screen.
Awash sound is very slow right now. Hello, are you listening my voice?
Yes.
Okay. Pranam. Good evening, sir. I'm very happy to listen you, and I got very enthusiastic information from your side. Actually, I knew that before 13 years before, when one person came from England and one our Indian name was, I think, Mr. Pathak ji, who came to India in Haridwar and established Agnihotra here. I was doing, I think, more than 1 month. It was very good feeling and joyful, but it was very uh, problematic to find out the local timing in which time we should do Agnihotra in sunset and sunrise timing. So can you please give me detail how to calculate that particular sunrise and sunset time?
Yes. I have a very easy and quick answer for you. There's an
Ji.
app. There's an app that you can get on your phone, maybe on your computer, at no charge, and it's called Agnihotra Buddy. Agnihotra, second word buddy. B like boy, UDDY. And it's Android phones, iPhones, and it's so easy that in 15 seconds you can compute the sunrise and sunset of the exact spot in which you are. And if you change your spot, you you drive 5 kilometers away, you can ask Agnihotra Buddy what the time is for there. It might be, 20 seconds difference, let's say. So Agnihotra Buddy is the way to go. And I'm just wondering if this Patakji you were talking about is one Dr. Uh, Ram Kripal Patak, who is more or less around my age and who was part of the Indian government in Delhi and teaching Agnihotra mostly to people in the agricultural sector. It might be the same person.
Yes, Mr. Pathak was linked with the agriculture sector in India and government sector.
Right.
Uh, but right now, I don't have any contact of them, and I want to do more research work in this field. Could you please suggest me uh, which website will be uh, more knowledgeable for research purpose in Agnihotra?
Yeah, homatherapy.org,
Okay, okay,
homatherapy.org,
yes, 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 yes.
and
I got it.
there will be sections in there which will note many scientific experiments that have been done on bacteria,
Yes.
on soil, on air, on radiation, and then you're welcome to write to me uh, at Barry Rathner at gmail.com, and we
Okay,
can communicate. And actually, 100 meters from where I sit, Dr. Ulrich Burke is at this eco village, and he's the person who coordinates, mostly in India, all these experiments with Agnihotra. He can't come to India now because of COVID restrictions, but for the last 10 years at least, he's been doing research 6 months of the year in India. He's German, and he lives here at Echo
yes.
Village, Buguraranya, 2 or 3
Ji,
months
ji.
a year. Thank you for your question and good luck with your activities, Dr. Gupta.
Sir, it was very nice to listen you because my PhD in reincarnation beliefs on work culture. Uh, you have told that the desire is the basic cause why I'm here. Uh, Intense desire is very important to take birth again and again, and which all types of desires which are not fulfilling are not satisfied with that, so people take reincarnation. In my relatives, actually my one uh, person was take reincarnation in Gwalior MP, and I then from that time I confident that this is a 100% right things. So intense desire is the basic rule to why I'm here and who am I. So you are telling about many things about that. uh, the spirituality is the basic concept to Agnihotra and all other things, and you join many things like spiritual things with Agnihotra, and it's very good because it's a very short Agnihotra action. So, but so that time people don't believe that it, it could be give result. So but some spiritual practices can enhance the result and take some uh, wonderful result.
Yeah, well,
So
desire is an interesting subject because people
yes,
think
yes.
that the reason they feel good after satisfying a desire is
Ji.
the satisfaction from engaging in the desire. In fact, it said it's the eradication of the desire, the fact that it goes away. If you want a piece of cake and then you eat it, you feel good for a moment, but then by the time you've had 5 pieces of cake, you will not want any more. So, if there is a way that we can avoid having the desire in the first place, then we're ahead of the game.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Uh,
Pranams.
Thanks a lot, sir, for a wonderful query and answer. And now we have a question from our audience of YouTube Live. I would like to put on the screen. Here is a question: how can we motivate youths for Swadhyay?
Very good question. Uh, I've taken notice that a great increase all over the world in young people in not only suicide, but also drug usage because of COVID-19, being locked down, not being able to be with friends, not being able to go to cinema, et cetera, et cetera. And we are very interested in motivating young people to do Agnihotra, to do Swadhyaya. Uh, the simple answer is, if you do Agnihotra at sunrise and sunset, which takes less than 10 minutes, costs hardly anything for a few drops of ghee and a few pieces of rice, number one, our experience is this will motivate you, whether you're a youth or whether you're older than a youth. This will motivate you to do Swadhyaya. So that's the simple question. The less simple answer. The less simple answer would just be, to study up on what Swadhyaya is. If you have a choice to read a book about, crime, or a book by a holy person, try both. But then you might find that the book written by the holy person might be more of an impetus towards Swadhyaya. So, all of our actions, each moment, what we think, what we feel, what we will, leads us in a certain direction. When I smoked marijuana, the last thing I wanted to do was Swadhyaya. Trust me. So I don't smoke it anymore, and I don't drink. So this is the lesson. Young people, they have all these social pressures. All their friends might be smoking and drinking and doing this and doing that. You, if you're interested in Swadhyaya, have to not just go along with the crowd for that purpose, but to be your own person, to follow your own intuition and engage in the behaviors that you decide are best.
Thank you so much, sir. I think you can able to see some of the books with a photograph on your screen. So I would like to brief intro about the great personality to our audience and the books written by him. Can you give a brief introduction about it?
Yeah. All of these books were written by Sri Vasant Paranjape, whom I referred to a couple of times. He wrote those books at the suggestion of the person in your photograph, who is Parama Sadguru Sri Gajanan Maharaj, originally from Akalkot in Maharashtra. And, I didn't get into some things about why Agnihotra was reintroduced to the planet in the 1960s, but it was because of Gajanan Maharaj, whom you see in the photo. Many people consider him to be the Kalki avatar, the avatar who has come to Earth to destroy pollution. How to destroy pollution? Through Agnihotra. So he commanded Sri Vasant to write first in 1970 this book, Grace Alone. Grace Alone. And this is the original Indian version from 1971. And it is one of the books there. It's actually the one on the extreme right, Grace Alone. That was Vasantji's first book. It's an amazing book. And another one there is this one, Light Towards Divine Path, which gives in amazingly simple words descriptions and details of Yajna, Dana, Tapa, Karma, and Swadhyaya. That book was written like in 1976. So I had the honor and the blessing to travel many years with Sri Vasant and to meet and take darshan of Gajana Maharaj in Akalkot and later in Shivpuri. So this is a bit of the history of this fivefold path.
Thanks a lot, sir, for giving a brief introduction about it. I think audience will get benefited from it. And a question from my side is to how someone can understand the real meaning of Swadhyay, because they got confused with so many dramatic concepts related with Swadhyay. Some follow the studying good books, or some follow some other techniques, and so other things. But in your opinion, or in Vedic perspective, or in eternal Rishi culture, what is the true meaning of Swadhyay, and how it is related to the self? And a related question is, how can we understand our true self?
Mhm. Okay, first, I want to say something that I first heard from the grandson of Sri Vasant, whose name is Sarvajit Paranjape. And he told me once, he's quite young, not much older than you, Samyak, and he lives in Goshala near Maheshwar in MP. And what he said to me one day was, the spiritual path is like walking on the edge of a sword or a blade, a very sharp sword or blade. And you can fall to the left, you can fall to the right. So even though some of these concepts might be uh, easy to understand, the quotation goes, it's simple but not easy. Simple but not easy. It may be simple to understand, but not easy to do. Swadhyaya, it's difficult to speak of it generally. Why? Because it's such a specific process for each person. Each person has his or her own vikarma, for example. But I'll give you a couple of quotations which might help. Let's see. Eye is the organ of sight. Ear is the organ of hearing, etc. The constitution of humans is taken to be body, mind, and intellect. Is there anything beyond this? The physical sense organs bring their temptations. The psychic sight brings the occult temptations like siddhis. Is there anything beyond this? Is there anything beyond this? Well, I'll give you a hint. The answer is probably yes, but you have to discover it yourself. And for example, siddhis, powers that you develop as you grow spiritually, are temptations also. And one eventually learns that that's not the goal, to be able to make things appear from nowhere, to be able to be seen in two cities at once. The goal is to discover yourself, to become a better servant of the divine. So I've given you a few hints there. Beyond that, I just have to say, if a person engages in yajna, dan, tapa, and karma, swadhyaya will be much, much easier to do.
You have explained very in a very mystic way and in a very true way like a guru replied to his people when he asked about true self. And really, when we read the Upanishads, the perspective of Upanishads also state something like it. When people ask his guru that who am I, so he replied in that way. So you are uh, also replying in that way. It is very interesting and very uh, insightful answer from your side. So, without taking too much time, I would like to ask few of questions. My second last question from my side is, in your opinion, how the mental health professionals, as you also from the field of psychology, and I also a student of psychology. So, in your opinion, what is the role of these practices like Agnihotra, Swadhyay, or we can say a fivefold path for a better mental health? And we see that any medicine or any physical medicine, we can say, is not so much uh, impact on the our mental issues, because mind is not such a physical entity. So, in your opinion, what is your advice to the mental health professional students and who are dealing with such kind of issues?
Yeah. Well, the modus operandum of Agnihotra, of Yajna, is three simple words: atmosphere, prana, mind. Atmosphere, prana, mind. You change the atmosphere by burning these fires. Uh, it collects and balances prana, and prana and mind are like two sides of the same coin. Any change in prana is automatically transposed to the mind. So, improving mental health is a function primarily of improving the mind. And that's, doing the fires. Self discipline is another way of helping the mind. I think in Hindi or Sanskrit or Marathi, the word tup means fever. If someone is ill and they have a fever, why is tapa related to that word? Because doing self discipline is like burning out, like a fever, the samskaras, the current desires, and it gives us more control over our minds. So that's yajna and tapa. Uh, I'm not sure what your point was at the end about medicines, uh, but I'll just tell you my personal feeling is I'm not against uh, medicines. I lean towards one uh, liking natural medicines, herbs, and such, and increasing one's immunity through healthy food, vegetarian, of course. I've been a vegan now for about 2 years and a vegetarian for about 47 years. Uh, that's good karmically and that's good physically. But if someone has a mental, let's say a chemical imbalance in their mind, for example, and a psychiatrist thinks they should try an antidepressant, for example, to help with that chemical imbalance, I'm not against trying that for a patient or whatever. The world we live in is so polluted. Delhi has the worst pollution in the world for at least 2 months of the year. So if you're living there and you have to breathe that air, then maybe you need to try something as an antidote to that. So, you know, sometimes we can talk about vaccines, which is a little bit in the same category.
Thank you so much, and we should respect all the these professionals and should take precautions first. And the main root cause of all these problems we can try to solve is with the Agnihotra, in my opinion. I think so. So, without cleaning up the air, without cleaning up the atmosphere, without cleaning up the our pran and mind, we are not just so much able to treat all these problems. So, moving to our wind up session, and we have to wind up our session. But at last, you had wrote some of the books I would like to put on the screen. Uh, can you briefly introduce about this book? And you are also saying that new book is also is in running mode. So also tell our audience about that upcoming book.
Yeah, I don't know too much about this book. Uh, I was corresponding with Mr. Kulkarni, and he asked for some advice, if you will, in certain areas. He corresponded with me and perhaps with Dr. Ulrich Burke as well, homotherapy teacher. But I asked him to send me a copy. There's an ebook as well. So I can't talk to that book precisely. I do know that Mr. Kulkarni has done this simple Agnihotra of which I speak for quite some time. So that's encouraging. But to speak to the book itself, I can't yet.
Thank you so much, sir, for providing your valuable time. At last, any conclude remark from your side as a spiritual master or a spiritual practitioner like that to the whole the humanity from your side? Any conclude comment or remark to whole the humanity?
Well, I would just say take note of those two websites I mentioned, agnihotra.pl, uh, which stands in a sense for Poland, at the Eco Village that I've lived at for the last 12 years, Eco Village Brugu Aranya. And then another website, which I mentioned, homotherapy.org. And those books are available at Amazon, amazon.com. And if you search, I think either for Fivefold Path or for Vasant Pranjape, you'll see those books and you could purchase them. My suggestion as to which books, my first suggestion would be perhaps the book Homotherapy, Our Last Chance. Homotherapy, Our Last Chance. Another book, which I mentioned, Light Towards Divine Path. And the first book of Sri Pranjape, Grace Alone. Those three are a good place to start.
Thank you so much, sir, for providing your valuable time and a wonderful, clear, excellent explanation. And in future, I would like to invite you again for a blissful talk which will help the humanity and the whole world in a positive way. And I think the websites you mentioned during the session will truly help to the everyone, and one should visit these websites and at least a look about the Agnihotra, about its true scientific perspective with daily sunrise and sunset Agnihotra, and try to start practicing it with the recommendations on website with our experts. So thank you so much, sir. Once again, with your permission, I would like to wind up our today's session.
Please. Oh, you want me to end it or you?
I want you with a Shanti part or mantra.
Shanti part of mantra. Uh, Om Dio Shantihi, Antariksham Shantihi, Prithvi Shantihi. And then I've forgotten a couple ones, but it ends with Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you so much. And today the Shanti is very much important nowadays. So it's very essential that the Shanti should be made in all the universe, in all the creatures. And thank you so much for all this. And thank you to our audience who joined us through YouTube Live. And this session will be uploaded after a few minutes, and anyone can access it. So thank you all for providing your valuable time. And in future, we will meet with a new session soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Namaskar.